you very much to the organisers for having me. Thanks to Lee and to Carl and for everyone that's done everything in this conference. It's been fantastic so far, and hopefully it doesn't, dive bomb from here on. And also, thank you for coming. I'm always impressed by people who can make the first session on time the day after the conference dinner. I'm not sure I've ever achieved it myself, so congratulations. Very well done. So today, this talk, in one sense, hopefully is quite apt considering a lot of the discussion that's happened throughout this conference, where there's been a lot of emphasis. Yesterday's panel session was a good example. There's a lot of emphasis on the fact that we need to keep in mind the knowledge that occur in the fields that we're working with, and how we can, in some sense, understand these knowledge, but also build them, teach them, learn about and see how they work. Today's talk is very much aiming to go along those lines, trying to understand knowledge building in some sense. We've spent, as a community and a field, a lot of work has been done on knowledge building, bringing knowledge back in has been one of the key steps forward, I think, that this community has done. And there are lots of people who are now, as we've seen, starting to turn towards knowledge building. So today is an attempt at getting a little bit of an understanding of how we can see that, how we can understand what that is, and not just take knowledge as these static things, but something that can be cultivated over time as such. Those of you that have done, that were in a workshop on Monday with me, it was a little bit of a cart before the horse situation where I was trying to teach something before I introduced them, so this one's going to be a bit familiar. And a few of you will have seen kind of various incarnations of this as we go. So this is an evolving project all the way through. So, as a lot of you would know or be involved with, this talk is part of a much broader program trying to grasp the nature of knowledge in some sense. Knowledge being very, very broadly defined here. It's different forms, how it develops, how we can see it in text, quite crucial, or at least I come from a linguistics background, so how we can see it in text, how we can understand knowledge semiotically is kind of one of the vital things for me. And then from the educational side, how we can then use this to do something, how we can use this to improve teaching and learning. Today what we're going to try and do is explore the really highly nuanced meanings often seen in humanities. The types of meanings that, if you get them, and they're rich and there's lots there. But if you don't get them, you can wallow for many years having no clue why you're really struggling with literature all the way through. In particular, what we want to try to get at is how a lot of fields develop their own uncommon sense dispositions, their values, their moral and aesthetic stances, or more broadly, their ways of seeing the world. That's what we're really going to be pushing at today. All from an educational perspective, what do students need to learn in order to be successful in the humanities? All the way through. We're going to worry in particular about one text. So, those of you that have ever engaged with linguists know that we can get a lot out of very, very, very little. We struggle with anything more than about 2 paragraphs. I think my favourite line that Carl likes to say is, "Give a linguist a clause and he's got a career." So we're going to be looking at a tiny little stretch of a text here. We'll build up a little further and kind of expand out. But this text is a highly valuable, the thing we're looking from is from this very highly valued anthology in poetics, ethnopoetics particularly, that was attempting to bring to the fore oral poetry from around the world, from basically non-Western, at the time, literate cultures, and he problematizes those terms. It's from the 60s. If you want to check it out, it's a beautiful collection. So I'm going to read you the text, just to give you a sense of what we're doing. Then what's going to happen is I'm going to kind of take a step to the side. We're going to come into a bit of knowledge and meaning in terms of how we conceptualize it in the sciences. We're going to run through that in order to come back to how we can get at this. So it's kind of a long run-up to get there. The run-up is trying to get ways of seeing. So what I'm going to emphasize about this is the preface from this anthology. It's from the 60s, and what he's really trying to emphasize is that that it's worthwhile, not just worthwhile, but it's important that we don't just focus on literate Western canon at the time, and also that we be very careful about dismissing languages and peoples without written language, in particular dismissing them as primitive. And he problematized the term primitive. Keep in mind, this was the 60s, this term was being used up till then, different approaches about what we should do. Rothenberg, this guy, at the time, tried to problematize it and recharge the term primitive as something positive. That primitive was a very complex positive thing. Now, a year later he scrapped the term and never used it again, but this was his attempt. We wouldn't use this term now, of course, but just to give you some background about what he's trying to do here. So there's 2 paragraphs, just going to read it through to you, and then we're going to keep going. So, primitive. Primitive means complex. That there are no primitive languages is an axiom of contemporary linguistics where it turns attention to the remote languages of the world. There are no half-formed languages, no underdeveloped or inferior languages. Everywhere a development has taken place into structures of great complexity. People who have failed to achieve the wheel will not have failed to invent and develop a highly wrought grammar. Hunters and gatherers, innocent of all agriculture, will have vocabularies that distinguish the things of their world down to the finest details. The language of the snow amongst Eskimos is awesome. We wouldn't use the term Eskimo anymore. Also, that fact is a bit problematic. But anyway, the aspect system of Hopi verbs can, by a flick of the tongue, make the most subtle kinds of distinction between different types of motion. Anyone knows he's making a reference to a guy called Benjamin Lee Wharf there. What is true of language in general is equally true of poetry and of ritual systems of which so much poetry is a part. It is a question of energy and intelligence as universal constraints, and, in any specific case, the direction that energy and intelligence equals imagination have been given. No people today is newly born. No people has sat in sloth for the thousands of years of its history. Everything by the Titan rocket and the transistor radio, and the world is full of primitive peoples. But once change the unit of the value to the poem or the dance event or the dream, or clearly artifactual situations, and it becomes apparent what all those people have been doing all those years with all that time on their hands. Now this text, a lot of the values underpinning it, I'm sure a lot of us would agree with. There are some things that, there's nuance in there that has changed over time, but what this text, amongst many others at the time, was trying to do was change the prevailing understanding that there was this kind of hierarchy going on. And this is a particular field of poetics. And he was trying to, amongst other people, he wasn't the only person by any means trying to do that. So what we want to look at is how it builds its knowledge. As I said, this is highly influential in the field of ethnopoetics. It's one of those texts that is kind of considered seminal, gets reread over and over and over and over and over again. It's been heralded as a new way of seeing the world of poetry that attempts to correct the Eurocentric and chirographic bias. I know it's a new word when I saw this. That's the written word bias. Yeah. Good word. Against non-Western, oral, traditional ways of speaking and meaning by driving an interpretive frame from discourse in its own cultural context. Okay, just to emphasise that this is a text that's influential. So, what we want to look at is how this text has helped spark a shift in the ways of thinking in this discipline. How has it progressed in some sense, or how does it build its knowledge? Or eventually what we'll talk about in terms of knowery stuff. Put another way, what are the meanings in this text? What are they trying to get at? Because most of us in here have been long steeped in education, we can interpret this quite easily. Most of us, I would take a guess, and really get what he's trying to get at here. But it's incredibly subtle and nuanced rhetoric at how he does it. And it's by no means easy if you're not someone who's spent the last 30 years in an educational institution looking at these types of things. So, as a point of departure, we're going to take a step to the side. As I said, we're going to look at some meanings in the sciences, which is what we kind of generally have a good sense of in terms of when we know that knowledge is hitting us over the head. We can kind of see it, sort of, to an extent. We're going to cover this through what LCT calls constellations. So constellations of meaning, networks of meaning that underpin particular fields of practice or particular situations in some sense, and that make sense from a particular perspective. So when we come at it from the sciences, from the more knowledge-y, codey stuff, When we think of technical meanings in science, we generally think of meanings underpinned by what LCT calls an epistemological constellation, meanings that tend to arise, or constellations that tend to arise in fields that emphasise epistemic relations. One thing I'll step through all the way is that these constellations, these uncommon sense, these really technical constellations across all fields, one of the key things they regularly do is pull together a whole wide range of phenomena that in our everyday existence have very little to do with each other, and pull them together as the same in some way. And the principle we're asking is, how are they organized? So we see that all the way through. So where are we at? We are going to explore this through a primary school text, an elementary school text. It's going to be seen very simple, but it does a lot. That's quite remarkable. I'm just going to introduce three little relations. Don't need to worry too much about them, I'm just kind of getting a sense. And these are the relations we can see that build epistemological constellations, those more associated with knowledge codes. One of them that this text does a lot of is classify. So it says that something is a type of something else. X is a type of Y. A flame robin is a type of patrika bird, for example. We've learned something else. Sequencing, where one event follows another. This could be temporal, this and then that, in time, this and then that. In terms of causation, this causes that, or condition, if this, then that. Not too worried about distinguishing those at this stage. And then the final one is arraying, ordering things of more or less. We'll see examples. We're going to cover this through this text, Ways into Science, Push and Pull. This is one of my favourite texts in the world. It's taught me a lot. Apologies for the photos as well. I didn't scan it very well. Poorly, in fact. So what we're going to look at is what this text does. This is oriented toward an elementary school, kind of younger infant school, well, not quite infant school, younger crowd. One of the things it does very heavily is classify a range of everyday experiences as pushing and pulling. Things that we can accept, but it's taking a step toward the uncommon sense, taking a step toward academic knowledge. So, when do you push? You push a crowd, you push a swing. Swinging and cramming? Very different from each other. Pushing. We've got nice little photos here. And I love how happy this person is, and I've never quite worked out whether this person is terrified or... When do you pull? You pull a brush through your hair, you pull a book from your bag. Do you pull or push your socks on? What do we do? Ooh, lovely, well done. Okay, so it's set up this really uncommon sense classification so far. Putting your socks on, brushing your hair, pulling books from your bag. They have nothing to do with each other in everyday existence. They're not explained in any sort of condition in relation to it, so you can only put your socks on once you pull your book from your bag in any sense. But they're all classified as the same. And the fact that you guys can very easily classify putting your socks on as pulling or pushing says you've kind of got this constellation down pat. It's only taken a few decades, but well done. And it keeps going. A digger pushes rocks into a heap, a toy car needs a push to make it go. Michael pushes the keys to play a tune. Playing the keyboard is very similar to a digger in this instance. Alex pushes the ball when he kicks it. What pushes and pulls can you find as you play? An engine pulls a train, a tractor pulls a trailer. Sorry. An engine pulls a train, a tractor pulls a trailer, a dog pulls on its lead. Tim pulls on a jumper. Can you think of 3 more pulls? You get the gist, we're not going to go through the whole book. Oh, it's good. we can kind of have a chat later, I've got the whole book there. So the first thing does it classifies the whole world as the same in some sense. Pushes and pulling, well, not the whole world, but a range of different things. This is a really crucial step toward uncommon sense, to academic knowledge, to be able to see things that are incredibly diverse and go, yep, that's just the same thing here for our purposes. But it also indicates that pushes and pulls can be stronger or weaker. It doesn't just classify, it also steps toward measurement. This is the first step toward quantification that occurs all the way through The sciences, really important step. Trevor gives a weak pull to the rope. Aisha gives a strong pull to the rope. We'll come back to see what happens later. Or Emma gives a weak push to her car. Ben gives a strong push to his car. Stronger, weaker, more or less pushing. It's not just this is a push, that is a pull, but also you can have more or less in terms of strength. And this text indicates that this can have effects on the world. Sequencing. Emma gives a weak push to her car. Ben gives a strong push to his car. Ben's car goes further than Emma's car. If this, then that. Very simple for us, but very important, crucial step into academic knowledge here. Or, I think this is one of my favourite. Trevor gives a weak pull to the rope. Aisha gives a strong pull to the rope. What do you think will happen? Turn the page to find out. Whoa, what do you reckon is going to happen? Yes. Aisha pulls Trevor in the pool. Trevor gets wet. Aisha has a stronger pull than Trevor. Okay, so these are the types of meanings. Although we're looking at primary school text, I can assure you that these basic general meanings just keep going. They get more complicated, they get more integrated, they get more intermeshed with each other. But I can show you final year undergraduate university texts that do those three things over and over and over again. That'll do it with graphs, maths, and various other things, but very similar. There's one more classification going on, not just pushing pulls, but actually steps into technicality here. You use a force every time you move something, changes direction or changes shape. A push is a force. A pull is a force. Everything in the book we have seen is a force. The entire world so far is a force, according to this book. You use pushing and pulling forces to twist and turn things too. So this text pulls together a wide range of everyday events, classifies them as pushes and pulls, and then eventually as forces. In this sense, this is just a step toward it, but in this sense we can suggest that it establishes a relatively well integrated, for this level, of histological constellation, which brings together a range of different meanings and integrates them, in this instance, through classification. Or if you want to come in a different way, it presents very strong, or develops very strong condensation into the term force. Force now encompasses a lot of things here, except toward technicality. Now we can kind of map them as a little classification taxonomy. Force can be pushes or pulls, all these other things I don't quite specify. The fact that these don't quite get into pushes and pulls indicates later on that push and pulls aren't actually technical. You get rid of them by the time you get to second half of science, second half of high school. And now all these things are force. Nice little integrated taxonomy. So that was a bit of a sidestep. The reason we did that sidestep is because people generally get that. Step through that, and people go, yeah, that's knowledge, we can see it, yep, cool, yeah, lovely. I wanted to step through and say that this works really well for epistemological constellations. There are many more relations than what we showed, what I showed just there. Many more. They work quite well for fields such as the sciences, that often seem the sciences, at least more knowledge-y, codey stuff. But for much of the humanities, they don't quite capture what's going on. If you go in to look at a lot of humanities texts and try to do those three relations, it comes across as a bit incoherent. Or just not really there, and you can, if you're not really paying too much attention, you can walk away saying the humanities don't do much because they don't do this stuff. Although they occur, they don't really tend to be as deep, nor as consistent across texts. So what I'm going to do is do the same thing for the Rothenberg text that we saw, same thing for this humanities text, show that it doesn't work. Then we're going to get into how do we come at it. So looking at the Rothenberg text, now sequencing, classification, or arraying are particularly prominent. So from this text of sequencing, although there are some events, they tend not to be linked in any way. There are events, but they're not really sequenced. So here's a few. Everywhere development has taken place in the structures of great complexity. Doesn't get elaborated on. It's there. People who have failed to achieve the will not have failed to invent and develop highly wrought grammar. There's no if, this, then, that. There's no this causes that. There's no this and then, 7 years later that, in any sense. The aspect system of the Hopi verbs can make the most subtle kinds of distinction. No people have sat in sloth for thousands of years of history. There's events, but they're not really related. Sometimes they are related, but we're going to see that they do this for a very particular reason. So measure everything by the Titan rocket and the transistor radio, and the world is full of primitive peoples. If this, then that. Once change the unit of value to the poem or the dance event or the dream, it becomes clear what all these people have been doing with all that time on their hands. You need to know what that is. If this, then that. But I'm going to suggest that we can come to this a bit better. Okay, so that's our long run-up to getting into it. I said we we're going to look at a text, and then I didn't show you it for half an hour. Similarly, so sets up some classification, but they're not particularly coherent. They distinguish different languages, Hopi and Eskimo. Eskimo, we wouldn't use the term, and it's also not a language, so. It distinguishes between, it says there's remote languages, and you can kind of guess that there's probably some non-remote ones. And then I'm being generous by saying that it suggests there's a taxonomy between half-formed, primitive, underdeveloped, and inferior. Not really. They're all pretty evaluated, not really taxonomies. And there's no array here. It just doesn't do the meanings that we see in knowledge codes. Doesn't do epistemological constellations here, really. But of course, it does build knowledge. It's not just faffing around. In fact, it builds quite rich knowledge, really influential for its field. So the question is, what are the specialised meanings this text, and possibly the broader humanities, emphasise here? And here I'm going to turn to specialisation. I'm going to possibly spend a bit more time on just going through the relations in specialisation than you would expect, just because I want to emphasise particular features of them here. So, as we would know, specialisation involves two main relations. Epistemic relations, which conceptualise relations between knowledge and its object of study, knowledge and its object, to an extent, in some way. And social relations that conceptualise relations between knowledge and its subject, or author. So, looking after the object, looking into the subject, we know that they're independently variable as we go. And we can emphasise one more or less. So this has got a bit of text on it, I'll step through. Stronger epistemic relations. When we often think of stronger epistemic relations, we often think there's more knowledgey stuff there. It's a good rule of thumb. There's more knowledgey stuff, stronger epistemic relations. I just want to look at what it's trying to get at here. That stronger epistemic relations is a way of conceptualising knowledge claims that emphasise stronger boundaries and control over what can be claimed knowledge of, and the means of studying. So this is often manifested through specialised knowledge, skills, procedures, techniques, pretty vacuous in a way, but I'm trying to get at the stronger boundaries and control over, for those who know Bernstein, related to classification and framing here. It constrains what can be claimed knowledge over and how to do it. You can't use whatever and you can't talk about whatever. Weaker epistemic relations downplay such relations. They tend to have weaker boundaries and control over what can be claimed knowledge over and the means of studying it. You can claim knowledge over more things, and you can do it with a range of different ways of studying it. This boundaries and control over is going to be really important to how we build the axiological constellation, or rather what its effects are. Stronger social relations, very similar but with the subject. Stronger social relations, knowledge claims that emphasise stronger boundaries and control over who can claim knowledge and what personal dispositions are needed to claim knowledge. So it constrains who can claim knowledge and the dispositions. So often emphasises personal experience, social position, gender, class, race, sexuality, ability, etc. Refined taste, a finely tuned palate, a nuanced interpretive sensibility, from a deep engagement with the ways of knowing the field. They seem to just want to get longer and longer descriptions there. Whereas weaker, downplay those. They tend to have weaker boundaries and control over these things. Okay. So I just want to emphasise the boundaries and control over. It's not just there's more knowledgey stuff, there's more knowery stuff. It's that When you've got strong representative relations, it constrains more, in some sense, what you can claim knowledge over and how. When you have stronger social relations, it constrains who can claim knowledge and the dispositions. Okay, and then we should know that. Plane. Okay. Getting there. These emphases tend to lead to different meanings. We've already seen a Histological constellation. Those emphasising social relations tend to build axiological constellations, and that's what we're going to go through now. Long run up here. So we can come at this not through epistemological constellations, classifying, sequencing, arraying and the like, but we can think about, okay, how does it build its axiological meanings? How does it build its specialised ways of knowing or seeing the world in terms of axiology? So rather than explicit knowledge building, we should be focusing on knower building. How this text develops its particular values, dispositions, moral, aesthetic and political stances, how it cultivates its knowers' ways of seeing the world. Okay, so I said I was going to tell you about that. I stopped, I didn't do it for about half an hour, and now I'm going to tell you I'm going to do it again. So, stepping this through, how does it cultivate its specialised values and what are its effects for how it develops dispositions of knowers? So, we've read this text, we'll come back to it here. I'm going to introduce 4 relations. A few of these, if you went to the Monday workshop, you'll have seen before. We've seen this text, it brings together these relations with quite, I think, impressive rhetoric in order to build quite a coherent way of viewing what he's doing, what he's trying to get at. So, 4 main rhetorical techniques this text uses. And of course, this is not the only things that can happen, but they seem, in my more and more reading, more and more analysis, seem to be quite common. Positioning, which positions meanings as being from the perspective of something or someone. So-and-so says this, so-and-so believes that. If you look at it from the perspective of the Titan rocket, the world is full of primitive peoples. Positioning, opposition, and this should have opposing, but this works so well doing positioning and opposition. So, opposition establishes opposition between meanings. That this is contrasted to that, this is opposed to that, in some sense. Don't worry, we'll see examples of this. Rattling through it, we'll see examples. Likening, this is a really crucial one that we'll spend quite a bit of time on. Similar to what we saw with the classifying, or axiological version of this, where it construes meanings as being similar to other meanings in some sense. This is the same as that, this is similar, we can view it from the same perspective in some sense. And then charging, giving a value, is it good or is it bad? To be very simple. Yeah. Okay. We'll go through each return, we'll build a picture of the constellation, then we're going to interpret what this means for the knowers that are being built here. First strategy that Rothenberg uses quite regularly here, not so much in this first bit, but throughout the rest of the text, is positioning. Positioning particular meanings from a particular perspective. And this is most obviously done when someone specifies the source. So for example, right at the beginning, that there are no primitive languages is an axiom of contemporary linguistics. Contemporary linguistics says there are no primitive languages. Nice and easy. Already suggesting that if you align with contemporary linguistics at the time, you'll agree with this. If you don't, and you think of contemporary linguistics as a load of crap, then you might not agree. Fine, easy, cool. But it also does this a bit more subtly by not positioning things in terms of a particular source, but in terms of alternate perspectives. So jumping to the second paragraph, here. Measure everything by the Titan rocket and a transistor radio, and the world is full of primitive peoples. But once change the unit of value to the poem, the dance deck, or the dream, and it becomes apparent what all these people have been doing all those years with all that time on their hands. One perspective is from the Titan rocket and the transistor radio. The transistor radio is the big technological achievement in this text in the 60s. And the world is full of primitive peoples. If you come from that perspective, that's what you'll see. He does this a lot, this perspectival stuff. But if you come from the perspective of the poem or the dance event or the dream, and he doesn't specify it, but you're clearly going to read in that what all these people have been doing all those years with all that time in their hands is a lot. Doing good stuff. Okay, let's set up some positions here. Contemporary linguistics believes there are no primitive languages. From the perspective of the Titan rock and the transistor radio, the world is full of primitive peoples. The poem, from the perspective of the poem or the dance event or the dream, that should be all, it becomes apparent what all these people have been doing all these years with all that time on their hands. Some perspectives, cool. This gives our first step into this constellation being built. And if you know a little bit about it already, you would know which way you're probably meant to align here. You're probably not meant to go, yep, the Titan rocket is the height of achievement of humanity, so everyone else is primitive. You're not meant to do that. We'll show that you're not meant to do that, but this text very much positions as one way. But it also hints at some oppositions. Contemporary linguistics considers there to be no primitive languages, but those who view things from the Titan rock and the transistor radio consider the world to be full of primitive peoples. It hints at an opposition here. You can't align with contemporary linguistics if you link with this idea, or if you think of the Titan rock and the transistor radio are the peak of humanity. But these are made explicit, or a bit more explicit all the way through. And we'll see this through the second rhetorical strategy called oppositioning. This involves setting up a negation or a contrast in some sense. It involves making very explicit that there are multiple contrasting ideas. And in this text, this is often done through negation. No, nice and easy. Or some sort of conjunction that indicates concession or contrast, things like but. I really want to emphasize that when we say the word no or not, when we negate, we don't just put the negative. We negate in order to set up the positive to shut it down. We negate to indicate the positive and shut it down. Otherwise, we don't say it. If things can go without saying, we don't say them. The negation is about setting up to shut it down. And that indicates there are multiple voices going on here. So, there are no primitive languages. Setting up an idea that there are primitive languages to shut it down. There are no half-formed languages, no underdeveloped or inferior languages, setting up those ideas to shut them down, indicating that there are other voices that may think such things. You wouldn't say that there are no primitive languages if no one was ever to believe that, if it wasn't an idea already. People who have failed to achieve the wheel will not have failed to invent and develop a highly wrought grammar. No people today is newly born. No people has sat in sloth for thousands of years of its history. We'll stop there, and then we'll come to the last one in the set. So it sets up positions explicitly, and then the oppositions. There are no primitive languages, there are primitive languages. There are no half-formed languages, there are half-formed languages. There are no undeveloped or inferior languages, there are underdeveloped. You get the gist. Really important oppositional things being set up. And if you've read any of Carl Maitland's work on constellations at all, showing the student-centered, teaching-centered constellation in education, one of the key points he emphasizes is that these constellations often get set up as a binary opposition. That if you believe in this, you are contrasted with this other thing. If you want to say that I'm doing teacher-centered learning, then you're against student-centered learning. It's absurd, but that's how these things get set up. And there's one that sets up an explicit opposition not through no or not through negation, but through but. Measure everything by the Titan rocket and the transistor radio, and the world is full of primitive peoples. But once changed the unit of value to the poem, the dance event, or the dream, or clearly our factual situation, it becomes apparent what all these people have been doing all those years with all their tiny hands. You get to know this text really well. I'll say it over and over again. Yeah. People linguistic laws, and they have a career. This is what we do. So it's making it explicit that this is opposed to that. Put another way, it's positioning us in a way to say that we cannot believe this and this. We cannot align with the transistor rocket and the transistor radio, or the Titan rocket transistor radio, and the polar dance event the dream, or sort of. It's setting up an opposition. Measuring everything by the type rock of the transistor radio is opposed to measuring things in terms of the poem or the dance event or the dream. You can start to see the development of ideas against things being too scientific. A lot of humanities here. While seeing the world full of primitive peoples is opposed to it being apparent where all these people have been doing all these years with all that time in your hands. If you see this, then you won't be able to work out what they're doing. And we're meant to be able to have a sense of what they're doing. So this sets up a series of oppositions. So we've got some positions, we've got some oppositions. We're filling this out. But the next step that Rothenberg does, and this happens over and over again, I was almost going to use a very different text for this talk. I was going to use Ronald Bart's Death of the Author. For those of you that know anything about the various fields that he's influenced, one of the really kind of seminal texts of the last 50 years or so. And he uses exactly these strategies all the way through. And the way he uses them is not saying from, step to the Titan rocket or not, but he backs his strategies up by just listing highly valued knowers. Mallarmé says this, Sartre says this person says this person says this, and it all backs up exactly what I said. The painful irony is he's using authors in order to show that the author is dead. Anyway, this is a really crucial strategy all the way through. Sets up a series of oppositions, and they appear to group together. But the way he arranges the text makes it really clear what groups with what. These, we're going to call this likening. We're going to show this called as likening. And this likening has a really important dynamic for knowledge building that we'll get through. And this text is done implicitly, but we're able to read through. If you get to this point in academic knowledge, you can read into this stuff. It places clauses next to each other, and you're meant to interpret the the implicit relation here. The way I'm going to show it is by putting in an explicit conjunction. It ruins the flow of the text, it doesn't sound pretty, but it makes it explicit. Importantly, all these conjunctions that I'm showing are all about some sense of similarity. This is the same as that, this is an example of that, this is a rewording of that, this is... That there are no primitive languages is an axiom of contemporary linguistics where it turns its attention to the remote languages of the world, i.e., there are no half-formed languages. Similarly, there are no underdeveloped or inferior languages. That is, everywhere development takes place into structures of great complexity, i.e., people who have failed to achieve the will not have failed to invent and develop a highly evolved grammar. Similarly, hunters and gatherers, innocent of all agriculture, will have vocabularies that distinguish the things in their word down to the finest details. E.g., the language of Snowman is awesome. Similarly, the aspect system of Hopi verbs by the flick of the tongue make the most subtle kinds of distinction between different types of motion. Every sentence is a reworking of the same idea. This is the same as that, it's the same as that, it's the same as that, it's the same as that. The important thing about the dynamic here is that if you touch on any of them anywhere, it implicates everything else. So, especially in a lot of linguistics, if you talk about the aspect system of Hopi verbs, you're very much going to be emphasizing how rich non-literate languages are. Unless, of course, you're an American linguist, in which case you'll use it to show that Hopi is nothing special at all. That happened a few years after this text. That's a linguistics joke, don't worry. Okay, and it keeps going. What is true of language is equally true of poetry and of ritual systems of which so much poetry is a part. Indeed, it is a question of energy and intelligence, with universal constraints, i.e. no people today is newly born. Similarly, no people are sat in sloth. That is, measure everything by the type and rocket. Okay, this is the same as that, it's the same as that, it's the same as that. There's 10 pages of this. It goes over and over and over again. Quite beautifully, I would think, myself. But does it over and over again. I'll show some really explicit examples. I just want to pull this all together so far in a diagram. It's not the prettiest diagram. I'm still working out how we can do pretty images of this, so if anyone has ideas, I would love to chat to you about it. I'm just going to do the first paragraph that shows what they established, the constellation involving two opposed positions. Oops. Contemporary linguistics says that there are no primitive languages, which is the same as there are no half-formed languages, the same as this, which is the same as that, and that is opposed to this view that there are primitive languages, that there are half-formed. Setting up oppositions and contemporary linguistics aligns with this. And I'll show you how it sets it up in a way that makes us also align with this. There's one more really significant instance of likening in this text. There's a really significant effect on the constellation. It's quite blunt in this text, but again, it happens over and over again. What is true of language in general is equally true of poetry and the ritual systems of which so much poetry is a part. Everything I've just built for language, poetry is the same, ritual is the same. I don't need to build up now that poetry is really rich, and this has the same language, all cool. Just sets up this constellation, it shares the constellation of language with poetry and ritual. It equates the constellations. Everything to do with language is the same as poetry, the same as ritual systems, and later on it talks about, says it's the same as the dance event and the dream. It actually says the same as music, the same as painting. And it really pushes. Basically all cultural artifacts outside of agriculture are similar here. In doing so, it's how to share meanings built up in one or the other. There are no primitive poetries or ritual systems, and everywhere a development's taking place in the poetry and ritual systems in structures of great complexity. It's just borrowing the entire already established constellation for language. And doing more than that, it's borrowing the larger constellation surrounded with linguistics as it was at the time, for those who happen to know it all the way through. So it says that this is what linguistics believes. So, we can set up a constellation, and it's not just this, but it's language equals poetry for ritual systems. That constellation works for all of them. This strategy has really, really important effects for how knowledge is developed in this field. By repeatedly listing and likening examples and equating constellations of language with poetry, with ritual, with dance, with the dream, with music, with art, painting, and the like, there's a gradual accretion of objects the text is claiming knowledge over. It claims knowledge over language, including grammar, vocabulary, structure, aspect systems. Well, you're not meant to stop aspect systems, you're not meant to go, well, aspect systems are great, but the evidentiality systems, they're rubbish. You need to keep going with it, you have to create order. Poetry, ritual, dance event, dream. I've used the word accretion here. If you know the accretion model of the solar system, the accretion is a description of how the solar system arose, when, a couple hundred years ago, something like that. Just these tiny little particles floating around, all with gravitational force between them and everything else. And gradually they started to come together, and they clumped together. They went from tiny little bits to slightly less tiny little bits, which meant the force was stronger, and they got more and more, and more and more, and more and more, and eventually, here we are, over time. I'm trying to suggest that this is the same. You add more and more and more, and that is meant to emphasize to whoever is reading it that it doesn't just stop here. You can keep going as far as you want. Well, not as far as you want, but really, really far. This keeps going. As I said, 10 pages long of this accretion. More and more examples are given. So, I'm not going to read it through, but it's the next paragraph, and it does the same thing. Just this is the same as that, it's the same as that, it just keeps going. And my favourite part is when it gets to the point where it sets up the different types of poetry around the world, and it equates it to really highly valued modern poetry in the West. And he calls it analogy. So he's got the poetry that he is calling primitive, keeping in mind he's trying to say primitive is really complex here, and indicating what it's like in Western poetry. A poem carried by the voice, a pre-literate situation of poetry composed to be spoken, chanted, or more accurately sung. It's just like written poems for public readings, performance poetry, poets, theatres, jazz poetry, rock poetry, Blake's multi-image symbolism. You got that? Trying to pull this really rich constellation that's already in the field of poetics and say, same thing here. Then it keeps going. Another one, highly developed process of image thinking, concrete or non-causal thought and contrasted simplifications of Aristotelian logic. He says that contrast Aristotle's clearly not good here. It's like surrealism, deep image, random poetry, composition by the field, concrete poetry, picture poems, prose poems, happenings, total theatre, poets as film and video makers, voices sonore, data, more, same thing. And it keeps going. And eventually they run out of European ones, and they just list, suggesting there's even more out there in Europe. Really important here, sharing this constellation over, trying to emphasize how rich the poetries around the world are. It's quite blunt when he does it there, but yeah, that's okay. It's going. The effect of this continual lacking all the way through is to progressively weaken the boundaries about what the field can make claims over. It progressively weakens the boundaries, it can make claims over more and more things. What in specialization is weakening epistemic relations. Really want to emphasize that if we went into this and thought about epistemic relations in terms of there's a bunch of knowledgey stuff there, there's stacks of knowledgey stuff there in terms of technical terms, bits of language and all that type of stuff. But that's not what's going on. It's weakening the boundaries of what you can claim knowledge to. You can claim knowledge over language, you can claim knowledge over poetry, you can claim knowledge over makes multi-image symbolism and other things and the like. Weakens the boundaries. It emphasizes specialized meanings can apply to a widening range of phenomena. This is really important. I'm always amazed and kind of struck by people in literature, poetics, art, who are able to look at something they've never seen before and get an incredibly rich interpretation out of it. See something they've never seen before and just blow you away with talking about this thing. I can't do it. I can do it for rugby league sometimes. It doesn't quite get value in the academy, unfortunately. But this is one way in which it's built. In fact, it's done it really explicitly further into the text where it blurs the boundaries of what poetry even is. Where it says, it's very hard, in fact, to decide what precisely are the boundaries of primitive poetry or of a primitive poem, since there's often no activity differentiated as such, but the words or vocables are part of a larger total work that may go on for hours, even days at a stretch. What we would separate as music and dance and myth and painting is also part of that work, and the need for separation is a question of our interests and preconceptions, not of theirs. So poetry is music and dance and myth and painting. It's everything. You can use this for wider. I think you get the point. Yeah. Spinning over head. It keeps going. I'm not going to read through that one. But in terms of knowledge building, it emphasizes a disposition where one is able to interpret an increasingly wide range of things. Language, poetry, ritual, dream, dance, music, myth, painting, art. Doesn't say culture, but you can just keep going. All the semiosis if you want to come from a more linguistic side. Yeah. But importantly, you can't do it from any way. You can't do it willy-nilly. Yeah. We're not doing a relativist code where you can just jump in and do whatever. By doing the likening or the accretion of all these things is similar, it's emphasizing that all these different things are the same in some way. And what they're saying, what is similar about them is that they're underpinned by this axiological constellation that we can kind of synthesize into no primitive language and primitive language. What is stable in this text is the axiological constellation underpinning the interpretation. You can claim knowledge over more and more and more things, but it does so with a very stable set of values. If you get these values wrong, you can no longer claim knowledge over that. There. Primitive means complex is what he's trying to synthesize there. I want to suggest that this is the basis of knowledge building in this text, and not just in this text, in a range of other texts and fields that I've looked at. Admittedly, I'll emphasize that this is for those that this is more cultivated these fields. I haven't really looked at anything where it's entirely from or kind of emphasizing subjective relations and everything else. But this one very much happens this way. Texts grow a particular axiological constellation, they gradually build it up through rhetorical strategies such as sourcing and oppositioning, I guess that one. And then weaken the boundaries of what this axiological constellation applies to through accretion and likening. There's one more thing and then we'll wrap up. One final thing and then we'll wrap up. It doesn't just set up these oppositions, it charges them with value. So you constellate and you charge. You set things up in relation to each other and then you say which ones are good and which ones are bad. And it's very, very, very consistent. It's a very definite pattern. So don't worry if you can't read this, but basically red is bad, negative, green is positive. The side we're not meant to agree with, that there are primitive language, half-form language, undeveloped, consistently negative charging all the way through. Not meant to improve about them. Whereas this one is kind of quite severe here, but structures of great complexity, not have failed to invent and develop a highly wrought grammar, will have vocabularies that distinguish the things of their world down to the finest detail. Language of snow is awesome. Really positive stuff. The only times that it does negative evaluation on this side is when it's talking about technical things. And we've already seen that they've said that the technical stuff, the Titan rocket, is not what we're looking for. Failed to achieve the wheel, innocent of agriculture. This is outside the scope of this constellation. Yeah. Don't worry about that, let's just say it just keeps going. Green, red. And this is further emphasised when it eventually gets to the point of saying, I'll read this to you in a sec, but it says, if you can't see this, this is because the translation is terrible, not because the poetry is bad. The translation, i.e. you and the people working on the issues. Poetry, where you find it on primitives literally everywhere, weakening further, it's everywhere, involves an extremely complicated sense of materials and structures. Everywhere it involves the manipulation of fine address of multiple elements. If this isn't always apparent, it's because the carryover by translation or interpretation necessarily distorts where it chooses some part of the whole that it can meaningfully deal with. If you expect the primitive work to be simple and naive, you will probably end up seeing a simple and naive work. And this will be abetted by the fact that translation can, in general, only present as a single work as part of what is actually there. Really works hard not to negatively charge the poetries, but to negatively charge the translations of those poetries if they're there. I really want to emphasise that although I'm breaking this up and it kind of turns into a bit of a caricature of itself the way I put it together for analysis here, I really want to emphasise that I'm putting this as a kind of model in the sense of I'm putting this as a very highly valued text. These are really rich strategies. Although when I break them up and kind of poke fun at them a little, it seems like I'm poking fun at them, I really want to emphasise that I'm not saying that this is worse than the sciencey stuff at all. This is a really crucial way of building the world that builds our values that we all align by. So returning to our earlier question, what are the specialised meanings in this text? Or what is the knowledge that can be learned from this text here? The text cultivates a disposition that emphasises very particular, very specialised values. And it does this by building a stable axiological constellation and charging it. But just as importantly, the flip side of the point is, it de-emphasises any particular object of study to which these values hold by recruiting a wider and wider set of examples. There are some things out of the scope, the Titan rocket, agriculture, but cultural products in terms of art and poetry, music and painting, it's all there. Put another way, this text cultivates an axiological cosmology that emphasises increasingly weakening epistemic relations. I would suggest that in this field, one of the bases of success is to find something new that no one's ever seen that shows that it's just as rich. I would guess. Yeah. And stronger social relations. So the ideal Noah being built here then is one that can conceptually interpret and appreciate a wide range of potentially new phenomena, things that have never seen before, and they can interpret it with a very particular kind of aesthetic, moral, political judgment here. Taking a step back, the reason trying to get into this is delving into texts such as this shows that there is a way that we can see how null building might occur and what the axiological meanings are in a particular field. We don't have to be in the field to be able to see them. It helps, it really helps. But they will be said at some stage. You can work them out from there if you want to be able to show it to anyone. And hopefully or ideally, or kind of the underlying thing that's driving this is to potentially possibly use this to inform a pedagogy eventually that can make these things explicit in some sense so that we can widen access to fields that require refined aesthetic interpretations, nuanced ethical dispositions, sophisticated political judgments and the like. We don't just want people who have been brought up in it because their parents had it, but make it explicit all the way through. Or, just as importantly, or even more importantly, give a resource for changing these fields by seeing what they're like.